2, 3, 4. Hi, I'm Jimmy Brown, and welcome to my new column called String Theory. In this column, I'm going to try to teach you some practical applications of all the music theory I've learned over the years, going back to when I went to music school back in the 80s, and then working here for Guitar World for 23 years as music editor, and also playing a couple thousand gigs and learning things along the way. I'll try to keep it fun and interesting and not make it abstract. If you do want a full-fledged course in music theory, I suggest you pick up my 2 DVDs, Mastering Fretboard Harmony and Mastering Fretboard Harmony Part 2. They're 3 hours each, and they cover several semesters of college music theory. Both are available on the GuitarWorld.com online store. All right, I'd like to start things off by showing you a cool little etude I wrote called Autumn Leaves Counterpoint. An etude, by the way, is a musical composition that has actual aesthetic value, but also teaches you some things technically and/or compositionally. And in this case, it's both. It's based upon the chord changes to an old jazz standard, Autumn Leaves, which is in the key of G and then goes to the relative minor key of E minor. The chord progression, just to get it in your ear right now, is A minor 7, and then D7, G major 7, C major 7, and then what's called F sharp minor 7 flat 5. You can think of that as A minor over F sharp, and then B7, E minor, B7, E minor, E7. Okay, so that's okay. I end with E7 because that's going to push you back into the A minor 7. The whole thing is an 8-bar phrase that just keeps cycling around. And what I'm going to do is start off very simply with whole notes. It's going to sound almost like the Pachelbel's canon in D, but I guess maybe you call it canon in G because it's in the key of G. And then I'll show you a few variations where each one gets a little bit more complex and it builds upon the previous variation. And it's going to be taking the notes that were in the previous variation and adding to them. And we'll end up with a little grand finale lick. And then there's actually more to it than that, which I'll have to save for next time. So here is the first part of it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm playing the bass line. A, D, G, C, F sharp, B, E. See, that goes through what's called the cycle of fifths. And then I'm playing 10th intervals on top of that. So I'm playing A together with C, which is the third of the chord. When you separate it by an additional octave, you get a 10th interval. See, if I play A and C down here, that's a minor third, or if I play it here. But if I add an octave between the two notes in addition to the third, a very open, pretty sound. A little vibrato to make it sound sweet. So in terms of frets, I got 12 and 13 here on the A and B strings, and then 10 and 11 on the low E and G strings, and then 10th fret and 12th fret on the A and B strings, and then 8th fret and 9th fret on the low E and G strings, and then 9 and 10, and then 7 and 8, and 7 and 8 move over a string, and 7 and 9. And then what I'm doing here is letting the bass go to the third of the chord. That's the third of E major. And then playing the fifth here. Okay, now here's our first variation. I'm going to add a note, insert a note between each chord change in a rhythm of half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I did the same thing. I was playing these 10th intervals. Except now I'm adding the 7th. I'm going. See, I'm using hybrid picking, by the way, picking the bass notes and plucking the higher notes. That's 12th fret on the G string. That's the 7th of the chord. Makes it a minor 7. And then doing this again. And then hitting that C note in the 13th fret again. That becomes the 7th of D7. So now we have, instead of just A minor to D to G, we're going A minor 7. Here's the 7. Resolves down to the 3rd of D. And then hitting that note again, it's the 7th. That makes it a D7 chord, right? And then that's pretty. I'm adding the F sharp on the 11th fret of the G string. And hear how that goes? Down to the 3rd of C. A little bit of a stretch here up to the 12th fret. And then for the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, I'm playing E, which is the minor 7th. And you hear that resolves down to D sharp. Very logical, right? Okay, now I'm kind of introducing some more harmonic movement there. It's as if I'm going E minor, D7, E minor, and then E7. See, you hear how that pushes you back to A minor 7? You could play it without the bass line. You have a bass player play it. It would make it nice and pretty, like a lead guitar thing. Add a little bit of gain. You know, kind of Jeff Beck style, right?